Sonic Frontiers is the latest effort for Sega to conquer the 3D realm. They never have quite gotten there over the decades, but they've got one of the most popular games in video game history. They've got some lessons to be learned from, and in my opinion, it's a decent effort. This is not a complete failure like we've seen in the past. It's not something that's broken or embarrassing. It's a fun game to play, but Sean, you're seeing things a little bit differently.
Well, it's not. It's kind of broken, but it's not embarrassing, and that's a step forward for the Sonic franchise because generally these games are embarrassing to way too weird. I'd have to say.
Always weird.
But it's a solid effort. I'd have to say. You liked it a lot more than I did. I'll let you talk about what you liked, and I'll get into what
I
did.
think there's a good sense of speed. You have to have that in this game. It's almost like a racing title, even if you're not moving fast or moving at all, because your character's really stuck where he is. You've got to get a sense that you're going fast. And I liked the way it made you feel like you're going fairly fast without being out of control, especially when you're going into those weird loopy warp areas or the rail jumps or places where you've got to jump and parry from one character to another. I liked the sense of just your aerial navigation. I felt like you could do a few things in the air. You can kind of adjust to what you felt like to avoid death. So you have a number of things you can parry, you can do a jump dash, you can just do the traditional double jump, or you can run up walls. And it replicated kind of what it's like to play a really good Sonic 2D side-scrolling game, but in a 3D form. Now, if I'm going to play a Sonic game, it's not going to be this one. If I'm going to go back to something, it's going to be a 2D game. Those are far superior. Sonic's meant for that type of format, and you've never really seen him succeed in the other format. Like, he couldn't really make the leap like Mario did, and I'd have to say Pac-Man, same struggles, could not make that leap into 3D ever.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, there were a couple early 3D games that stuck with me because I played them as a kid. I don't know if I went back to Sonic Adventure, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, Sonic Heroes. I think there's a lot of goodwill in the Sonic community or just gamers in general toward those games because a lot of people played those at the right time. I could think about them and say that they were probably very janky. So, but since then, I bring back the Shadow the Hedgehog thing that we've talked about before, where I got it for getting straight A's. That's why I failed school the rest of my life. But it was being sold as this like new edgy thing, and they were trying to reinvent the franchise, and it came out and it was horrible. It was a terrible, edgy. I mean, it's a meme for a reason. And then on G4, one of the people behind it was like, "This is the prelude to Sonic 06," which we all know Sonic 06, maybe even worse than Shadow. And since then, he has no identity. Like, I don't know if you've found an identity for him, even in Sonic Frontiers. I don't know what this game is trying to be.
Yeah, Sonic's always lived in multiple worlds. He's got the retro 2D games almost everybody loves. He's got the comic adventures, which are really deep and meaningful. I know you're an expert on those, Sean. And the animated series, many animated series in which he takes various forms, most of them kind of cheesy, edgy 90s gimmicky style characters. And all of that is just stripped away for this. This is like it's definitely an attempt to reboot the character as a gaming character. There's almost no personality here. You don't see the sarcasm, you don't see the wit. To me, I'd like to see some of that, but it doesn't really matter to me because he's kind of an empty vessel where you get to live out this fantasy of just like sprinting through this huge world. But Sean, let's talk about that a little bit. You found this world too big, too vacant.
It feels like I compare it to Nier, where in Nier the world is supposed to be this big vacant place because there are no humans, and while that kind of you could say the same thing for this game. There are still these little I don't remember what their names are, but these little generic people who you collect and they should have societies. They should have it. It just feels like this world is there. It's not lived in. There's nothing interesting about it. It's just copy and pasted assets, and then the pop-ins, which we'll discuss more probably a little later. But the rails make no sense being in these worlds. Nothing makes sense. It feels like if you've ever played Gary's Mod and you just take a generic map and you're just like, throw all this here.
Yeah, very much is the opposite of like a Metroidvania map where everything is meant to like stop you or like make you double backtrack and rethink what you're doing. Everything exists in this game to make you go faster. Like it's like a child's jungle gym. It's like everything's set up. Even the enemies, they want you to just to move faster. It's really for speedrunners, I think, those who like to replay levels over and over again and just see if they can shave seconds off their time, up their score a little bit with those collectibles. And I like how there's some alternate routes that you can kind of sample and check out. But you're right, when you have such a big, vast world and you've got to move fast, it's going to be pretty dull, because if you bother to put a lot of stuff in there, it's going to not even be seen by anyone. But Sean, I know that one of your big disappointments with this game is that they lack there's a complete lack of Sonic's rogues gallery slash friends. They're just not in this game.
The story here, I mean, the story is a cursory. Sonic games don't need a big, vast story. They've tried it with Sonic Adventure 2 Battle and everything, and those stick with you, but again, I think they stuck with me because I was a kid when I played those games. Like you said, the Archie Sonic comics, they're so deep, and nobody cares unless you're like a real Sonic fan. We don't need Sally Acorn or any of that in here, but to me, this game just... the emptiness was felt in the story too, and in the characters. I mean, you have Amy, you have Tails, you have Knuckles. You have the general, and I understand stripping all that away. You're trying to start. This feels like a fresh start for the character, for the franchise. But at the same time, if you just stand around for a little bit, he starts like getting all philosophical and depressed. He's just, I wish Cream was here. I wish Shadow was here, and that emptiness there, it's like this disconnect. It's the emptiness of the world, and then, like you said, the character, you don't get a sense of, like, Sonic worked in the 90s because he was the sarcastic, like, the cool skater kid. He was the Bart Simpson of video games. And then you strip all that away, and it's kind of there in this game, but, and I don't know if you would say the same thing. I thought the voice performances especially were terrible and helped make Sonic could have worked in this game. I think it's the voice performance, honestly.
Yeah, the animation and the voice performances and the cutscenes really pale in comparison, because we've seen at least 2 solid movies. The second one I really enjoyed, and I thought they improved a lot. Once you have that kind of stature to live up to, it's almost like colossal drop off when you go into a very minimal effort like you see in this game, with like low rent voice actors, animation that exists only to make a cutscene to bridge loosely related pieces of the story to each other in weird levels that wouldn't necessarily have any relation. I get a little bit of fear with that new Mario movie coming out that it'll be the opposite effect. Like we've seen so many great Mario moments over the years. We have that awful Mario game. Can this movie be anything better than a Mario cutscene? I fear it won't, because the trailer looks cool. It has me excited, but that's the hype machine. I don't know if I'm going to really fall for that. But speaking of Mario, this really could have been Sonic's moment. Like you mentioned, this is a reboot of the game. This is recasting that character with a fresh start. They're probably going to need another fresh start after this one, though. That's just the way it goes with Sonic in 3D worlds. This could have been the Mario Odyssey moment where he just takes over, he capitalizes on the success of the movies, and he becomes, like, he takes that throne away from Mario as the video game character. But this game is not going to do that. This is going to be very forgettable. In the long run, I think you're going to find this in the value bins, Black Friday, Christmas era. Like, you're not going to, this is not a game to dump $70 on. This is a game that if you're interested in, you can wait a bit and you're going to catch it at a very low cost.
Yeah, and to that point, it's, even, I mean, you said it was for speedrunners, but there's so much to collect, and it's all cursory. It's just there. And I keep comparing this to New Donk City and Mario Odyssey, which I think is like perfect, where everything has a place. It's very tight and cohesive, which you can't do with Sonic, or you're going to slow him down. And I think that's what you run into with this character. Is it's so hard to create an open world, or even a smaller open world level that is cohesive, that always has something going on for Sonic to do, unlike Mario, who's slower and everything, and you can set up all those little set pieces. I mean, I think back to that level all the time, just because of how well built it is. And lately we've been playing God of War, which again, open world, slower concept. I mean, it's hard to compare Sonic and God of War, but it's that same thing where the open world is tight enough and everything feels complete. It feels like it's meant to be there. The puzzles are meant to be there. And in this, it's so empty and barren, and you question, like, why is this here? What is this doing here?
And I thought the game did provide a good sense of speed. At least it had you going quickly. But Sean, you felt the opposite, and I want to understand why.
Well, as we'll show here, you'll see the seagull flying faster than Sonic. It just bursts ahead of Sonic. I mean, and there are little elements like that where sometimes you get that sense of speed when you're on the rails and everything. It really gives you that sense. But then when you're traversing the world, there's too much, there's too much stuff everywhere. So it slows him down. It's just sometimes you get that sense of speed, but a lot of the time the game slows down anyway, and you have to wonder, like fighting bosses, collecting items, talking to your friends. Why focus on speed so much if you're going to slow everything down constantly?
Yeah, and bear in mind, both you and I, Sean, played it on the speed mode. There's two modes. There's a mode where you can go fastest, made for veteran gamers, and then there's a slowed down mode, which to me would be really depressing. I'd be like Sonic himself, just like sitting around, what am I doing? If I'm playing a slow Sonic game, like intentionally slow Sonic game, that's just sad. I don't know why that exists. Maybe it's for like if you're a really beginning gamer, or if it's just too fast for you, maybe you'd dip into that. I probably should have tried it just out of the sake of this review, but I can't do it. Like it's just not something that interests me.
And I can't even see myself going back to play this game. It's just, and again, it's not a bad game. I think we both feel that this isn't a bad game. It's just when it's bad. And let's talk about the bosses, because I think a lot of people are really impressed by the bosses. I felt they were I mean, you fight them multiple times. There are some that have systems that are interesting that really emphasize the speed, but a lot of the time, like the big giant one that you go up his arm, it's just broken. You're just flying off, going all over the place. So
Yeah, you had an opportunity for a God of War like thing where you're fighting like Cronus or something, like some Titan, and you get to like traverse this guy who's not only a piece of the landscape but also the enemy. Missed opportunities all around, and it's just, yeah, very generic battles in this game for sure. It was only really fun for me in the platforming aspect, but even that, some of that's frustrated. Like you found yourself frustrated by that camera at times.
The camera is and it's another problem that Sonic games have frequently had, is he moves so fast and the camera cannot keep up with him. And when you have loop-de-loops, when you have all these elements in a sequence to get Sonic to the top of something, that camera cannot keep up. So you're going to have deaths that are completely unjustified because you were going for something, you're going for a platform, you're just a little off because that camera was way over here and you needed it to be there.
Yeah, and going back to the older Sonic 3D games, which were a lot of them complete trash, sometimes when you died, it would be a colossal loading time where you would just be sitting there just like hating yourself, waiting. At least this new game on the new systems, you played on PS5, I played on the Xbox Series X, boom, you're a quick reload, you're back at it very fast.
And there's a lot more to do. If you feel like that was too much, you can just move on to the next thing, which is nice, which makes it easier for kids, makes it easier for those of us who aren't very good at video games, like myself.
And me too.
And I think that was fun, but there's just a point in any video game. I'm reaching this with God of War, where I want 100% everything, but I just realized it's all chores.
Yeah, that's the reason I never beat Majora's Mask, because at a certain point late in the game you feel like you're just doing collections for the sake of collections, just too advanced, and I was just done with it. And hopefully I'll return to that someday, but maybe not. And yeah, I get what you're saying. Too many things to collect for no good reason, and there's really probably not a great reward for doing that other than that satisfaction of the 100%. But overall, I'm going to give this game a fairly positive review. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. What about you, Sean?
I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. It's a good effort. It's a good start for Sonic Team to start working towards something better, but as it stands, this game is too broken and dull and uninteresting for me to recommend.
All right, well, thanks for talking Sonic with us. We'll see you next time. Game on.